with fear and trembling of God, knowing that he is your judge, knowing that he is your king, knowing that Jesus is your sacrifice. I don't know about you, but when I came to the cross afraid. And I didn't just come to the cross afraid of hell. I was afraid of hell. I didn't want to go there. It sounds pretty awful. How about everybody on the same page with me about that? Okay, I don't want to go to hell. But I wasn't just afraid of hell. I was afraid of God. But not in a negative way, in a positive way. I was afraid of God in a positive way. Why? Because it was that moment of repentance where I was recognizing God's authority and perfection and righteousness. And I looked at my own sin and I saw what? Oh no. I want to be with God. I want to be near God, but I can't be, and it's not God's fault. It's me. It's not God. It's me. It's the one time in human history where somebody can say, God, it's not me. It's not you. It's me, and mean it. Because I'm not worthy of being in front of you. I'm not worthy to be at your feet. I'm not even worthy of your table scraps. You know what David says about that? It's amazing. It's one of those passages where we just say it so many times that it just becomes meaningless. It looks good on a Hallmark card or on with crochet needle or whatever. And so we just, or a cross-stitch needle, whatever, pattern. It looks good on a wall. But think about what he's saying. You prepare for me a seat where? In the presence of my enemies, and my cup overflows. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? For thou art with me. Thy rod. What's a rod for? What's a rod used for? Discipline. And your staff. Who holds the staff? Who, in the Old Testament, who was the person carrying his staff? The patriarch, the leader, the father. For your rod and your staff, they what? Comfort me? They don't discipline me? They don't whack me upside the head even though I need it? I take comfort and joy and peace from your authority and your power and your presence. Only someone who has genuinely repented can say that and it be true. Because we are submitting to the will, to the fathership of God. So we work out with fear and trembling our salvation, saying, God, I don't deserve it. Please save me. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what I've done. I'm afraid of how I've let you down. And I'm afraid of what I've become in spite of your love for me. But then here's the hard part of chapter 2, verse 14. He says, do all things without what? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God, without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. People have read that passage on grumbling and disputing and said, there's like, well, clearly he's talking about people having arguments with. No. Therefore, right? No. He's talking about children and fathers. Who do children grumble and dispute? Yeah, they do it to each other. But primarily, who do they do it to? In this context, dad. But I don't want to take the trash out. But I don't want to clean my room. But I don't want to share. I don't want to eat my green vegetables. Fill in the blank, right? We've all heard those things as parents. This is going to sound bad because all of your kids have done that. My kids have done that. And I want you to understand that when I say this, I am including Jarrod's kids in the statement, okay? As much as I love them. Bad kids grumble. Good kids obey. And you go, oh, my kids aren't bad kids. I know that. I know that. Maybe the word bad isn't right. How about this word? Delinquent. Oh, you don't like that one either, do you? Okay. Poor. Nope, don't like that one. But you know why? Because they are negative things, and we don't want to call our kids that. But the truth is, if it wasn't bad, and it wasn't something that bad kids did, you wouldn't correct it when it happens. When you tell your kid to do something and they say no, or they argue, or they grumble, like, okay, let's say you tell them to vacuum the living room, right? And they go, oh, fine. And they go and they get the vacuum and they go, stupid vacuum. And I hate the vacuum. I got things to do. And she's like, she doesn't care. And then like they think mom can't hear them because the vacuum's running like that. But the whole time they're going like that. Now I'm going to throw somebody else under the bus here because I've been taking a lot of the hits. I'm telling you, if Stephanie saw that, what the response would immediately be. Are you complaining right now? I can just hear her say it right in the back of my head. I can just hear her say it. I'm sorry. What are you complaining about? Are you complaining that you're having to clean the house that your father and I have provided for you? That you live free in, by the way? You correct that. Why? Because it's wrong. Because parents are meant, church, hear me on this. Parents are meant to decide. Children are meant to obey. Amen? God the Father is meant to decide. Children, we as His children, are meant to obey. He says, do it without grumbling or disputing, because that's not what good, obedient children do. That you may be blameless and innocent children of God, without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation. What makes this generation crooked and twisted? Again, I have heard plenty of people throw adjectives in there or descriptions in there or whatever. They talk about how, of course this is a crooked generation. Look how obsessed with sexual immorality they are. Or look at drug abuse and alcohol abuse and all of these specific sins that we try to wiggle room in, crowbar into that description. That is not how they are crooked and twisted. That's not what he means. Now, those things are symptomatic of what he means. Agreed? But they are not what he is referring to. What he is referring to is the fact that this is a crooked and twisted generation because God tells them to do one thing and they ignore it. There's a word for that. Rebellion. Can we all agree that there is a fundamental difference between disobeying your parents and rebelling against your parents? Can we agree with that? You know why I was so hard on disobedience and yet so quick to forgive and love and cherish? It's because I was trying to head rebellion off at the pass the whole time. Now, sometimes you get in the way of rebellion and it barrels through anyway. There's a certain amount of, It wasn't just me. Like I think some I've had people ask this about us and others, and I've heard them ask my dad this, and my brother this, and my sister this. How do you raise, somebody in the church who raised a kid and they fell away, or they're not living the way that they're supposed to? And you go, well, how did you do it? And you're like, your kids are still faithful members of the Lord's church, and how did you do that? How are your kids so well behaved? First off, they're not. Second, listen, you're assuming that I was the only one responsible for that outcome, or that Stephanie was the only one responsible for that outcome. There were two other people involved. Number one, the child choosing to obey or not, and number two, God's blessing. Got to give a lot of it up to God, right? Because a lot of it was outside of my control. But this idea is this. Rebellion is when a child decides not to specifically disobey, meaning in the moment. It is a child who decides, I'm not going to listen to mom or dad, what? Anymore. And you write it off. You're not even going to consider it. I bet you a silver dollar that if you went to work tomorrow and walked up to somebody, one of your coworkers, who was obviously living in sin, and said to them, God doesn't want you to live that way. You should stop. If we all did that, a certain percentage of the group would get laughed at. Right? They would say, what are you talking about? And they would try to come up with all sorts of excuses why you were the crazy one for saying that, right? But y'all, that can be true, right? I can see it now, especially for those of you who have more than one kid can relate to this. Your kids get together. Avon and Harmony and Addie get together and they're talking. And Addie wants to do something she knows she's not supposed to do, or Harmony does, or Avon does. One of them says, we should do this. And then the other two pipe in and go, wait a minute, we can't do that. If we do that and we get caught, well, something real bad's going to happen. And then the excuses come, right? Like, we're not going to get caught. Let's just not get caught then. Or you hear the thing you really don't want to hear. I don't care. Listen, a kid saying, well, we'll make sure not to get caught. That's a kid who still has some respect for the rules, because they know they're breaking the rules and they know that there will be an associated punishment if they get caught, and they're accepting that reality, right? But a kid that doesn't care if they get caught, a kid that doesn't care if they get punished, a kid that doesn't care if they get chastised, or they disappoint mom or dad, that kid is in full-blown rebellion. How many of God's children are in full-blown rebellion? How many of God's children that you know are in full-blown rebellion? God speaks and they tune it out. He's saying, don't be that crooked and twisted generation, but instead shine as lights in the world. Lights of what? Lights of what? Obedience. Holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. He says that you obeying God would make my sacrifice worth it. Because remember where Paul is writing this from. He is writing it as a prisoner for the gospel, literally. Verse 17, even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. Likewise, you also should be glad and rejoice with me. I'm going to read that again. We're going to back up here to verse 17 and read it again. Because this is one of those moments where everything kind of like Lego pieces. Click. Right together. You thought you were building 3 different models and then you put them all together and it's one big model, right? Even if I am to be poured out as a what? Drink offering? What's a drink offering? Oh, it's a consecration sacrifice in Leviticus. If I've got to die to obey God, I'll do it gladly because that's how much I love him. Likewise, verse 18, you should also be glad and rejoice with me. Paul wants them to hear that he died for the gospel, which they will shortly after this, relatively speaking, and say, yeah, he knows they're going to be sad and they're going to be heartbroken because they're going to have to wait till eternity to see him again. But he also wants them to be happy. Why? Did you hear, guys? Did you hear? Paul did what Jesus did. He obeyed to the point of death. We're out of time. Thanks.